So first, Susie, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for having this conversation about leadership with me. I know we've known each other for 20 years now, way back from our days when we were in university together.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Rob. I really appreciate having this forum. At first, I was like, "What are we going to talk about?" I don't know what I'm going to say, but I'm just glad to chat with you. I mean, obviously, 20 years means a lot.
Yeah. And the idea of you not knowing what to say is very surprising hearing you say that. So my first question I'd like to ask you, so you're running for commissioner of Springfield Township. Why now have you decided to get into public service?
I think there's a lot of reasons, but mostly, if I could bring some levity a little bit, it's been a really rough past 4 years for people who look like me, and it's particularly this past year with everything that's been going on. It really has had me thinking, how else can I participate in a more meaningful and helpful way
Mhm.
for just the community discourse. And so I think that's definitely one reason. Another reason is I've actually just been a lot more connected to my community since I had children.
Yeah.
And as you know, with a little one, it really makes you look around and see, hey, how can I make the world something better for them as well?
Mhm.
And I certainly think that plays a lot into it. My kids are almost 3 and almost 1, so they're very little, but that means there's a lot of time to really make improvements in the world that we can give them in the future. So I think that's important. And fortunately, there was an opportunity where a longtime commissioner here has decided to just retire, and all the stars aligned. It made a lot of sense. And I thought, you know what? After all this year of contemplating, when he mentioned that, I reached out to him, frankly, and just said, hey, what do you think? And he was very supportive and um, just encouraging, and it's been a really wonderful start to the journey. So, and that was really the end of last year, and so that was very not long ago.
Yeah. Well, I think that leads perfectly into my next question, is you just being proactive. Like I said at the beginning, I've known you for 20 years, and one thing that I've always really admired about you is just your leadership skills. So I'd like to ask, what does leadership mean to you, and how are you going to use your leadership skills to make your community a better place?
Well, first of all, it's very sweet. I don't always feel like I'm a leader, but maybe that's part of what leadership means to me. I don't think leadership means a title. I don't think it means any type of station in life. I think anyone can be a leader at home and for yourself. Because really, leadership is about um, doing the right thing and the hard things, whether they're the right time or hard times to do them. And that could be exemplified in many different ways. And it's really being an example to others, and also providing the example to others that you wish to see in the world, really. And I think that's what true leadership is. I think leadership is also about understanding community, understanding others. Part of that could come just from listening. I think we provide leadership among our own friends by just listening to them and understanding what's going on in their world, and providing the empathy that I think is sometimes lacking
Hmm.
in the world, and providing that empathy, recognizing opportunities to change or fix problems, and then deciding how to address them in the appropriate way. So I think I'm not sure if that's a great leadership answer, but I
Well,
think
one
it
thing I
being
do like that you mentioned there, and my wife and I, we've had this conversation many times. It does feel like there's this lack of empathy, lack of going that extra mile, trying to understand somebody who has a different American story than yours, and then really kind of understanding that. And I think really what happened earlier this week, with what happened down in Georgia. I'm sure you'd probably have some thoughts that you would like to talk about with that as well.
yeah, I mean, it's sad. Everything that happened down in Georgia is so sad. And regardless of what you think, the quote unquote narratives that are being shared about it, the sad part as an Asian American is knowing, of course, the sad stories of the loss of these lives, but also the instantaneous guttural reaction that, oh my God, it's happened. You know, someone has finally taken it to the extreme. And by it, I mean discrimination, you know, and it's something that we live with for a long time. And the fact that that is a reaction is the problem, right?
Yeah.
Not that I'm having it, but that it exists and it's ever present, even if we don't talk about it. So I'm sad for those families and for everything that's going on, but uh, you know, there is no but there. It's just sad, and it's sad all around. We have to have these harder, darker conversations about our own American experiences because they're, you know, that type of discrimination we've lived with. And like, in a way, I don't have to tell you because I'm sure, I mean, I don't want to say I'm sure, but it's possible that, you know, your family's experienced it yourself.
I mean, just one event that happened not too long ago. My son was riding his Spider-Man bike. Just for everyone who's watching this, my wife's Korean and we have a son who's Korean as well. And one thing that's really important for my wife and I is for our son to really be celebrating his Korean heritage as well. Like we want him to embrace it. We want him to be proud of it. We want him to hold his head up high because of it. But recently he was riding his Spider-Man bike to the park. My wife was walking right behind him, and a guy in our town slowed down and screamed some racial slurs at them. And then, you know, being a father who wasn't there at that moment and, you know, hearing about it later, I mean, it's infuriating. And it's one of those things that it definitely dominates our, I wouldn't say dominates, but it's definitely something that we talk about around our kitchen table because we do have some worries about that. And it's something that, you know, it's not an isolated, you know, incident as well. I mean, it's definitely happening to a lot of other, you know, members of the Asian community. I've had friends who had threatening notes left on their doorstep as well. And every time you hear those, I mean, I don't really know how to describe the feeling of it. It's disappointing. It's infuriating. You wish more people would want to have this conversation. And I'm sure you feel the same way as well.
You know, the sad part is that feeling that you have, that's disappointment, that's infuriating. And the other feeling I have that is actually sad is it's not surprising.
Yeah.
And it's the hardest pill to swallow that you know, I think there's a part of you as a minority, though I'm not sure about that term, but as a person of color, as an Asian American, someone who's grown up in America and is as American as anyone else, really there's a hopefulness, right? That, oh, you know, it's going to get better. Generations are changing. People are going to understand more our experiences, and you get to this adulthood. I mean, we've known each other for 20 years, and you know, it's not surprising these incidences that happen. I mean, I'm so sad that you had to deal with that as a father and just as a person, and then on top of that to just feel like, well, that happens. I mean, it shouldn't be that way. It should be surprising when it does happen. We should get to that point. And I'm not sure we're there. And I think it's interesting that you say that the topic somewhat, I don't want to say dominates the conversation, but the terminology used is dominate the conversation. And I think that's actually a really interesting transition in our own lifetime that really, it never dominated my household's conversation. For one, my household was not English speaking, you know, when I was younger, but it didn't so much dominate it. It was just ever present, you know, and it wasn't discussed. It wasn't detailed. It just was ever present. You just know that your experience is going to be different and is going to be related to whiteness. I hate to say that, but unfortunately, it's true. And over the course of many years is just pervasive. It is existent, almost to the point where it's water off your back. And sadly, to say that out loud, it's unfortunate that I should ever feel that way, really. If there's a transgression against me or Mikey or your wife, it should be something that we should be able to report without thinking twice. It should be something that is unique and surprising and also infuriating. It's still infuriating, except that if you've experienced it so much, it is truly just a part of your experience. That is the part that I think is changing now, that I think we're trying to get to a point where other people who don't look like me, for example, can receive that message without some sort of course on it. And I think we're going to get there. It's just sad that we have been in this situation, and it's sad that people have taken it to the extreme.
But I think that's one thing with so many people that are in the Asian community. It was inevitable. I mean, you knew at some point something like this was going to happen. It wasn't like when I saw the headline of it, I was shocked by it. I mean, of course, the details of it you're very shocked of, but the event itself, you kind of felt, especially with where the discourse was at the national level.
We should do better and get to a point where this is a surprise and instantaneous, infuriating anger plus the surprise.
I mean, it's it's so hard to like really find the right words to talk about it. But like I said, I mean, it's something where you knew something was going to happen when you saw, all these studies coming out about crimes against Asians in America, and how that they're underreported. Like what happened to my wife, what happened to my son. That we didn't report that. So, I mean, that very easily could have been, another statistic that could have gone on in some of those studies. But I saw one, I just read about it the other day in the New York Times. It was the 16 largest cities in the US. There's been an increase in crimes against Asians of 150%. So when you see the crime increasing like that, there's an increased anger or hatred towards that segment of the population, where you knew at some point it was going to bubble over. And unfortunately, this Tuesday it happened, and it's frustrating. I mean, even when I'm talking about it, I feel
upset.
The frustration, the upset.
And should be upsetting. And I think I think you're right to be upset. I think you're right to not know what to say or how to speak about it. And maybe going back to leadership, part of it is sometimes knowing that you don't know the answer, knowing that you're just trying to get through a situation, and knowing that what you have in mind is really the betterment of the community or whatever you're trying to lead. So I don't want to just keep it, I presume not just communities, but organizations or teams, whatever it is that you're leading or trying to lead. I think recognizing that sometimes you don't have the answer and you're not sure, and leaning on other people to help you navigate that or coordinate whatever it is you're doing. I think that's also important in leadership. So I should say that it's okay to know the right.
And always continuously educating yourself as well as new issues are coming to the forefront.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, Susie, last question. For anyone who wants to support your candidacy, how can they get involved?
Oh, well, I know I don't live in Bergen County, but if you'd like to support me, I will leave my website here with you. I am actually running a few fundraisers, so please feel free to join. A lot of them are Zoom, so even if you're far away and you're interested in what I'm doing here, please go to my website, go to News and Events, check it out, and like my page. You can find me as many social media places as I can handle. One of the interesting things about small town politics is that it's a small town. And so you start as where you can, and having to start social media pages and a website and all those things. I will say this, that not everyone does that. And something that I wanted to do in this situation was just try it out, right? Do
Yeah.
something a little bit different, you know? At the end of the day, these are our neighbors, and how can we access our neighbors? It's, you know, in today's day and age, social media is one way, emails, of course, but eventually I'm hopeful to just knock on everyone's doors. So I think there's lots of ways to support me, and I appreciate that. And likewise, if there's any ways I can help Bergen County be a better place, even from here, to do so.
Well, I think just having this conversation we had and sharing it around here, and I know it's going to be going around your neighborhood as well. I think that's definitely taking a good step for our community here. So thank you so very much. And like you said, social media, I mean, that is a great thing. I'll be posting it here. You'll have access to it as well and can share it around to people in your neighborhood as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much for this very not long enough time. So can't believe you keep mentioning 20 years. That sounds crazy to me. So I really appreciate your time and everyone's time.
Well, thank you so much, Susie.